Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Beyond the Batcast, where I, Adam Upper, talk with Braydon Ketty about Batman, the animated series. And this episode is a special episode because for two reasons. Because one, it's Heart of Ice, which is an awesome episode. And two, we have a super special guest with us this week. It is Dr. DC from Dr. DC. How's it going, Reid?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, boys.
Oh, no
Thanks for
problem.
coming in.
Yes. Yes, thanks for coming because I know you said on your show before that yeah, this is one of the better episodes of the show, if not the best one, and you really like it. So, like, I was thinking once I got this going, I would actually have you on and stuff. So, figured here we are.
Yeah, this one won an Emmy. It's sort of, it totally revamped Mr. Freeze, who before this was just a guy with a cold gun or a freeze ray or whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah, it totally changed that character from being just a gimmick guy to having like an actual backstory. It's a huge episode, and it's so like emblematic of what's great about the animated series, which was like giving like a lot of depth and a lot of care and thought into like silly comic book stuff. It's the thing the show did so well. It's a great episode
And
for that.
yeah, wasn't he like dead in the comics at this point too? Like when this show
He
came out, I think.
yeah, he may
Did he
have been
die?
actually at this point. Well,
Yeah.
but really, there wasn't a lot to Mister Freeze
Oh
before
no,
this. He
no,
was
no.
just a cold guy. That was
Yeah,
pretty much
yeah,
it.
yeah. Because I said, yeah, like for like what we now know and think of Mr. Freeze is because of this show and really starting off with this episode, really is what
Well, yeah,
really.
if you go back and watch like the '60s Batman, he wasn't like trying to cure his wife. Like none of that was there. He was just a cold guy with a ice gun.
Well, he actually just realized it is pretty easy to kill Mr. Freeze. All you need is room temperature.
Well, yeah, and especially in that '60s Batman, because he didn't really wear the helmet. He would wear like the apparatus of a dive suit, but not the helmet.
So you
But yeah,
wouldn't
this
like
show
keep it
totally
in
reinvented him.
before we get started with the episode. What is your like history with the Batman show as a whole? Or did you watch it like as it aired, like, or did you watch it like after on, or what? Or what?
Yeah, I was born in the late '80s, so this is like right
Yeah,
where I live, basically, because this show started in what, like '92, '93.
yeah,
I would have been
92.
like 5 or 6. And yeah, I absolutely watched it when it was on, and then it was also like constantly syndicated and would rerun and stuff between it and Superman the Animated Series, and then of course like New Adventures and Batman Beyond. I watched all of that stuff when I was a kid. It was the bulk really of my superhero stuff. Like I had a small stack of comics I got from my dad, but I wasn't like reading them monthly. I wasn't collecting. My superhero intake was like this, X-Men, stuff like that at that time. Um, but it's so definitive and iconic. Like everyone says this, but I think it's true for certainly people of a certain age, which is like Kevin Conroy's the voice of Batman. That will never change. There's no version like it doesn't matter how good an interpretation is. It's not like a quality judgment. It's just Kevin Conroy is Batman to me. Mark Hamill's Joker. Like when I go, wow, that person did a good Joker. With very few exceptions, it's usually because they're doing something close to Mark Hamill. Like so much of this show really shaped my how I think the characters should be. Like the even for this episode, like Mr. Freeze, like the cadence of his voice, the sort of robotic, I've lost my emotions thing. Like if it's not that, I go like, oh, that's a weird take on Mr. Freeze. Whereas like in the Arkham games, which obviously are meant to evoke the animated series, they go out of their way to make sure those things are still in place. So to me, this show is like the blueprint of how to do a bunch of these characters. And that's not to say I don't like different swings or takes. I said it on my show on Dr. DC. Like I love like insane swing of Colin Farrell's Penguin in the Batman. I think it's like so much fun. It's like my favorite part of that movie. But like the to me, if I ever saw, and I love Danny DeVito, I love Batman Returns, but if I saw someone just nail the sort of like slightly more eloquent, you know, genteel kind of version of the Penguin that's in the animated series, I'd be like, that's it, that's the one. Everything else is like a take. It's not like new. Like the show to me is like neutral ground. You're doing the character. Everything else is like a take. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We're putting it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
was I was just gonna
go
say,
ahead.
like, just going on what you were saying about like kind of the importance of the show, and I think especially is a big thing about this episode in particular is I love a story that is especially character driven. And
Yeah.
like the episode is literally called Heart of Ice. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it boils right down to the theme of the character of Mr. Freeze because he was always my favorite Batman villain growing up. And this is one of my favorite episodes. There's one detail when I rewatch this, I'm going to save for when the scene comes up because I didn't realize this episode actually got better for me when I rewatched it again. There was a small detail that I did not notice the first time. I'm not going to say what it is yet,
Oh,
but I
interesting.
will save it as a surprise.
Can I just like throw my guess out there? You don't have to confirm or
Absolutely.
deny right now. Is my guess is that is it Batman using soup to fight the cold? Like the cure for the cold is his jar of soup.
You talked to Mike at Comic Con, didn't you? He asked me that specifically. No, we will get to that, but no,
All right.
it's more the essence of the story. But yeah, no, we are absolutely talking about the chicken soup. Chekhov's chicken soup.
Yeah, 100. Yes, absolutely. Chekhov's chicken soup. Yeah.
All right, so I should probably get into that then. Yeah, so this was like the 14th episode produced, but the third episode to air, which was like September 7th, 1992. Do you remember what you were doing September 7th, 1992, Doc?
Oh, yeah, Jesus.
Oh, a better story than
I
me. I just told Adam, like, I'm running out of material. I was two, guy.
I I had not yet turned 5 years old. In
Yeah, so I was
September
probably like,
7th, 1992. I was a couple of months away from turning 5 years old. So
yeah, I was like 2 months away from turning like 12, and I don't remember. I was probably like in like just starting grade like 8. So beyond that, I fucking don't remember because
yeah.
I not 100% if I was watching this like during the week when it was airing or if it was just on Saturdays,
I
really.
mean,
So
if you
like,
asked me
yeah,
what I was
so.
doing September 7th last year, I also couldn't answer. So.
What I was doing earlier today, I probably 100%
Yeah,
clearly couldn't
yeah.
answer really either. So, so I really should stop asking this question, but it's kept on going so far.
No
No, it's
millennial
good.
senility.
The trick, I think the real trick is that you guys have to get a much older guest on. You know, like someone that has like concrete, discrete memories from 1992. That's the going to
Challenge
be the
But
real
accepted.
trick.
yeah, but if
Yeah.
they're older than me at this point, like I think the memory start going, sort of like be like in the same boat. Like I don't fucking remember something that happened
Yeah.
like 30 fucking years
Do
ago.
you want to be a guest on my podcast? What's a podcast?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so this is
It sounds like communism.
written by Paul Dini and directed by Bruce Timm. So like a brilliant combo, which is why this is episode is probably as good as it is, really.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think the other piece of what makes the episode so good and the show in general is the voice casting is like grade A all the way through this show. But Michael Ansara is like he's perfect because he also like every great voice actor. I'm about to say something that like anyone that like is an actor would be like, yeah, that's what acting is. But you know, like we're in an era now where we keep casting celebrities in cartoons who are not necessarily voice actors. And there's a different skill to voice acting. And you
Oh,
notice it in
100%.
this episode because Kevin Conroy does like 4 voices in this episode because he's Bruce Wayne, He's Batman. He's not Matches Malone, but he's like security guard Malone. And then he's also like a random like henchman at one point, or like random guy
Huh.
at one point.
I
So he
didn't
has
even
like
catch
four
that
different
one.
voices. If you're listening, you can hear they're all Kevin Conroy, but he's adding different qualities to them. But even Michael Ansara, he does Victor Freeze and he does Mr. Freeze, and they're not the same. Like
Oh,
they're close enough that you know it's one person, but like there's a much different quality to the voice. It's more expressive when he's Victor Freeze, but it's still like there's a lot like underneath, when he's even doing the Mr. Freeze voice. It makes me think of that like that line in Watchmen when Ozymandias is like, no one else would notice, but to me John was screaming, where it's like that there's that quality to Michael Ansara's voice as Mr. Freeze, and it's part of what really sells this episode. It's like on the surface it sounds very monotone, very flat, but if you're like really paying attention, you're like, this is like the saddest performance I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, one thing I heard from the production notes was apparently he was actually like fighting with Bruce Timm because he was trying to like get more emotional with this. He's like, no, this is
Right.
like a broken-hearted man. Like he lost his wife. And he actually had to be talked into it by Bruce Timm to exactly as you said, be more monotone, more, flat
Right.
and void and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, like Bruce Timm obviously knew what he was talking about because, yeah, like this is the voice I hear when I read Mr. Freeze in the comics.
Totally.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and like the episode starts off with that monologue with him really just saying that if I forget what exactly what he says, where it's like the ballerina is spinning and he just has that fucking awesome monologue just to fucking start off him just being cold and monotone.
It's a
Just
it's a
this,
good it's a good like bookend for the episode, is like his having him do a sort of monologue bit. I really like it.
yeah, it's
Oh,
a
oh
bad
no,
thing.
this is it. Sorry, I just found it here because it is good. It's like, this
Yep.
is how I shall always remember you, surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful. Rest well, my love. The monster who took you from me will soon learn that revenge is a dish best served cold. And like the red eyes, like
Yeah,
opening
yeah,
up,
light
like
up. Oh,
it's a really really strong opening.
oh, fuck yeah. Fucking, yeah,
One quick thing I'm
probably.
gonna add. Do you guys know who designed the or character design for Mr. Freeze in this?
No.
It was
Mike
Mike Magnolia
Mignola.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, Hellboy's guy.
That's cool.
of Hellboy fame. Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
oh.
cool as hell. You can kind of see it actually now that you say it. You're like perfectly round eyes, and like, yeah, you go like, okay, yeah, you're right. That's a Mignola move. I wouldn't have thought it without you saying it, but you could definitely see it.
Oh yeah.
So after that fucking awesome monologue, it opens up on Summer Gleason giving a report saying that there's been a bunch of like cult related heists like in the middle of the summer. And like, and even though what I do is, I know if it was a Mr. Freeze episode, I couldn't help but think like cold related heists. I can't think of from the
Captain
TV
Cold?
show. Yeah, Captain Cold. Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, 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 yeah.
was like, even though he's not in the show, I'm like, I was like, yeah, I started thinking of him. I'm like, oh yeah, Mr. Freeze.
Harvey
Yeah,
Bullock's
it's
pounded on Captain Cold's door. He's like, "We know you did it. This is glacial profiling."
oh come on.
That's right. I'm ready for kids. I
You
have the dad jokes.
you can't help but think that if Mr. Freeze had waited like 4 months, he would have gotten away with this, because it's like it's so obvious what the pattern of crimes was, because it's like, oh, it's where there's a bunch of ice where there shouldn't be.
Oh, yeah, then they cut to Ferris Boyle, which I love the play on words of the name, like obviously Ferris and Boyle, like with the temperature stuff. But Ferris Boyle actually does kind of sound like if you were introduced at a press conference to a guy named Ferris Boyle, like that sounds like a rich person's name. But I love when he's like doing that kind of PR stunt there. And he's like,
Yeah,
here at GothCorp, we're the people company, which
yeah.
is pretty much like today's version of a family here.
Totally, but also, like just like rule of thumb, if your company is something corp, it's an evil company.
Yeah,
Goth
and
Corp.
and
Yeah,
combine those saying that they're a people company that immediately makes you not trust them. Like,
yeah,
come
yeah.
on, trust us.
It's very like they're just it's a very clever use of like things they know people will assume. It's like, oh, something corp and they're a people company. It's like, all right, like you don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to convince us Ferris Boyle is bad.
Yeah.
And then too, like with that, with First Boil, like even though like because we're going with the production order of things, like that this episode aired third, like that his voice is Mark Hamill. So like for people who are actually watching TV first round, would have this was their first introduction to Mark Hamill on the show before he like became the Joker.
Yeah, yeah, which is interesting. You know, like and you see his levels in this too, right? Because he's got like pleasant TV voice, Ferris Boyle. Then he's got like smarmy, like you know what they say, Bruce, like fuck the poors or like whatever, like his like normal voice. Sorry, can we swear on this? I'm just gonna
Oh
keep
fuck,
this.
100%, it's all
Um,
good.
um, and then like he also has his like angry Ferris Boy. Like when we eventually get to the tape, like what really happened between him and Victor Freeze, and then there's like shifts in that too, where it's like, oh, it's okay, and he goes into like TV voice, like we could talk this out. Like there's again the voice casting through all of this era of DC animated stuff is like wildly good, but there's a lot of nuance in these performances.
I think next is Batman looking at the pieces of the crime scene, looking at all the different parts of the Goth Corp equipment that Freeze has been stealing over the course of several crimes. And so he's showing on the back computer to Alfred the assembled pieces of what they all put together. And it's like this giant telescope. But the funny thing is when Alfred's kind of going like, my word, like you have to have like Batman turning around like, Alfred, do you actually know what you're looking at right now? Like, I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to be a part of your world, sir.
You guys have probably talked this to death already, but like the thing that I particularly noticed in this scene is like the art direction, the design aesthetic of the show is so perfect, right? Because like everything's art deco-y and like the suit styles are all double breasted. Like we're placing this like in the 30s, 40s, you know, like it's obviously not because there's computers and stuff, but then even like the sound of the computer, the whirring, the clicking, the like knobs and buttons and things like
Mm.
that. Like I love that it's basically contemporary, except it feels old. It's like one of few things I think the show Gotham got right as well. It's like the design of cars, the fact that Gordon's carrying a revolver. They're like these little like hints that we're looking at a before thing, not a now thing. And I just noticed it with the computer as Batman is like talking about these things where it's like we're it's one still image we're because it made me think of like when I was a kid, like this age, we had one of those old computers that was like the orange on black screen,
Yo,
Yeah.
yeah.
and it made me think of that where it's like, yeah, you can like make things in like 8-bit. That's sort of the sophistication of the visual process here. Like,
Batman's playing Pong on the back computer.
yeah, or that fucking Jeopardy game. There was a fucking old Jeopardy game that ran on DOS.
Actually, Alfred did say, "Are you taking up video games?" So we've
Yeah,
established that.
yeah, when he first came up, yeah. So
That's right.
he's going on the Oregon Trail or the Gotham Trail, I guess, in that version.
Yeah. I mean, Batman does almost have dysentery in this episode.
That's true.
He has dysentery of the nose in this episode.
Oh yeah, I'm just picturing that like when he gets the cold later on. Like imagine like what we've all had those days like where we've had to work sick. But like
Oh yeah.
imagine like trying to fight somebody while you're like hucking back snot in the back of your nose.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to
Or,
weaponize it at that point. You have to use it as part of your
or
offensive
your whole thing
capability.
is or your whole thing is sneaking around and you're just fucking sneezing up a fucking storm or just trying to be like, oh, like, get back in there, huh?
I am
Exactly.
the night, I swear.
So after figuring that out, the Batman says that he figures out that it looks like they're trying to do like a freeze gun of sorts, and he needs one thing left. And he figures out there's one Goth Corp place that has it. So that as it cuts to that night to Mr. Freeze like barreling down in a van, and then Batman showing up shortly after because the boat figures out that's where he's going.
Nearly ran over
Love,
those security guards too.
yeah, I love the Batmobile. It's like one of my favorite Batmobile design is that long, flat
Oh, yeah, me
Batmobile.
too. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, every time I
Um,
think of Batmobile,
I
I
do
definitely
also like just Mr.
think
Freeze
this
like
one.
hanging out of a van, like firing a freeze gun. I don't know. There's something kind of fun about that.
It's kind of
Like,
gangster. He's kind of like he might as well have just gone kind of like sideways with the free.
Sideways.
but it's also like it's relatively low rent. I think is why I like it too. Like Mr. Freeze has technically thugs in this, like goons. But Mr. Freeze doesn't have a gang, right? He's just a guy with a mission. He's clearly just told them, like, we're doing a heist. I'll pay you after. He's just using them. Like, we can tell he doesn't really care about them. So I kind of like that it's pretty low rent. It's like, just like, get a van. And then they sort of just go from there. Like, it's not like the Arnold Schwarzenegger one where he's in a big freeze tank or like something like that. Like, and like themed henchmen that in parkas or whatever. He's just like, get three guys in a van, meet me at the river, or like whatever.
Damn it, guys! We rehearsed this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, these guys kind of look like they're trying to like be like Eskimo themed almost. I think with their matching parkas or whatever though.
I mean, they're in winter coats, but I would say it's a lot less problematic than the Batman and Robin like weird Inuit appropriation thing, and then the hockey scene. Like, there's
Oh,
something real weird going on in Batman and Robin when it comes to Freeze henchmen. This one is just like at least they're just in coats. It's just like yeah, it's cold around this guy. Just wear
yeah,
coats.
yeah. So
Yeah, we're
yeah,
free Canadians, so when we're embarrassed to see hockey in a Batman movie, I think
yeah,
that's telling.
yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
sure is.
yeah. As I said in this pod before, like Batman and Robin was the first Batman movie I saw in the theater.
I mean, I love it. I don't want people to get this twisted. I love that movie, but like, there's sort of no comparing these Mister Freezes.
Oh, 100%. No, that's why I'm glad I like had seen like this show first before I saw that movie. Just to be like
Totally.
to know like which
Yeah.
one's like correct Mr. Freeze.
Yeah. Exactly.
And one thing I noticed that, like, I mean, not to dive too deep into the Batman and Robin of it all, but the thing that I noticed that especially works with Mr. Freeze in this, I mean, other than the campiness of Arnold in that movie, is they're letting the writing and the vocal performance speak for themselves. I mean, obviously they're not throwing puns at you like every 5 seconds, but like one line in particular I remember was especially, for lack of a better word, chilling. Is when he's like, "Let the evil inside be swallowed by unforgiving ice." Like that is,
Yeah.
whoop, no wonder this won an Emmy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's good about it is like, yeah, there's like Revenge of the Dish Best Served Cold or whatever, but like you're right, they're not opting for puns. They're just like, no, like cold is like all I feel now, so everything comes back to it like as a reference point, but not as like layers of pun. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. You know.
Chill. Still can't believe like Arnold's like so far like being lived in downtown is like the one like celebrity that I've like seen downtown like just out and about that one time like 2 years ago.
That's pretty crazy, actually. So
It
here's what I
is,
like.
yeah.
Here's what I like about this scene is that this is the scene where does he like freeze a henchman here too?
Yeah, Fred freezes the two legs. Yeah,
Like
that's where he like
he
show.
freezes the guy's legs, and like I know it's a kid's cartoon, but I'm like waiting for these things to shatter, right? Like I think there's a
100%.
certain level of like danger to it, and Batman gets encased in ice. Of course, he's got the cape that can defend him from anything wrapped around him, but I
Yeah.
do like that this guy's like legs get frozen. He's like crawling. He's like, "No, boss, don't leave me behind." And he's like, "Your failure is complete," or like whatever the fuck he says. And I love like it is like cold to just leave him there. Like we're setting up all that kind of like no emotion sort of thing. And the craziest thing to me about all of that, A, his legs don't shatter. B, when Batman breaks out of the ice, we then cut to Batman has like a chemical back to tank in the
Back to
Batcave,
take it.
and he's like thawing this like thug out in the back to tank.
Yeah, and
Right
even
when
Alfred.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and
He
even
describes it
Alfred
as a
told.
chemical bath too, like which is like, oh, it's not just like warm water. This guy's like submerged in some sort of like, you know,
So that's the
Like has it
second Star Wars
concoction.
reference in this episode because later on you have him hanging upside down like Luke is in the Wampa cave. Like you
Sure,
got to
yeah.
wonder if Mark Hamill's when he's watching this, he's just like, I see what you
Wait a
did there.
minute. Yeah, yeah. Wait a minute.
He's like, hey, we got this guy doing this voice. Like, we're stuck in these two scenes. Like, oh, I know what we'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just missing the bit where Batman cuts the thug open and sleeps inside him. Because, oh, I thought he smelled bad on the outside.
Thugs. Guy
Yeah.
cutting open like a random thug.
One thing I wanted to ask you, the doctor, is Batman has actually this is the second time that Batman has actually brought somebody back to the Batcave. Like the
Right.
first episode, it was Man Bat. I mean, Man
Yeah.
Bat's not going to remember much from the Batcave, but like, how often does that happen in the comics?
I mean, from time to time. Although I think Batman in the comics is a little bit more secretive
Mhm.
with the cave's location. Because the thing that the cartoon doesn't do as much as the comics is that Batman has like satellite caves. You know, like there's like a rooftop thing, or he's got a secret lab, or he takes them to Leslie Tompkins, or you know, like there's all these other places that he can go. But I mean, it does happen. Batman has brought what you might call like unsafe people to the cave before, but it's usually like they've been blindfolded, they've been bound, they've had their memory wiped, they were under the influence of a fear toxin. There's a blah, like there's always some way where it's like we could like magically not worry about it, basically.
And the guy did have his
Yeah,
eyes covered. I noticed in the tank. I was
yeah,
just like,
yeah. In the tank though, but he wasn't like knocked out before they got there though. So when he like Batman like knocked him in the back of the head before he got there, so he'd be like, okay, you can't know where I live because you're just a
Yeah,
random Mister
I mean
Freeze thug.
the cartoon, I think wisely doesn't get too hung up on the details because it's really not that important, and it becomes that thing where it's like if we've got to see every step along the way, like we're not going to catch Freeze this episode. Like we got to, you know.
Yeah, because in an earlier episode, like some kid that he was talking to said like, "Oh yeah, how you went back to the Batcave?" I'm like, how does this fucking random kid know about the Batcave?
Yeah, like the myth
Right.
of Batman is interesting too because like people seem to know quite a bit about him, but yeah,
disturbing how much they know about him, actually.
Yeah, because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it still seems to be like early, like you're like 2, 3 Batman sort of thing, because everyone's still starting to come out sort of thing. Yeah, so
True,
everyone
but
should
like
be
he
know
has a
like
Robin, not in this episode, but like Dick is Robin, like fully
yeah,
in this first season of Batman. So it's like he's been doing it
yeah,
a bit, you know. Like
yeah.
Yeah. And what does he do with this thug afterward? Like, so yeah, like you thought the
doesn't
guy's
he
leg.
say to Alfred like take him to like he has some line to Alfred that's basically like make sure he doesn't figure out he was in the Batcave, but send him back to town or send him to a hospital or something like that.
Pump him full of drugs and leave him at an ER's like doorstep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Where'd you get the
It's
drugs,
like
Alfred? Don't ask, don't tell, sir.
yeah, leave him on the edge of town with his like newly like unfrozen legs, so he can like barely walk.
Yeah,
Hey, listen, this guy's lucky to have legs, I think, at this point.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah,
sure enough. So yeah, then they're talking in the Batcave about like the Goth Corp attack, and I remember he was saying like I'm gonna go talk to Ferris Boyle. So he goes as Bruce Wayne into the office. Bruce Wayne's actually got a cold by this point, and it's kind of
Yeah,
fun.
and he was sniffling even in the Batcave beforehand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is kind of funny. Batman sneezes like my dad, like very theatrically. Like it was kind of like over the top. Like obviously it's a cartoon, but it was just like triggered some childhood memories. That was
I
kind of
mean,
weird.
if anything, I would make the argument that like cartoon sneezes are smaller than real life dad sneezes,
Sure
because
enough.
I've like it's happened to me even where it's like there's no real reason for me to sneeze as loud as I do, but like I also like I'm not doing it on purpose. It just
Yeah,
happens.
I
You
think
have a
that one thing
theater
that
background, though.
That's
yeah,
true. Yeah, it's
but
a supported sneeze.
I will test that they get louder as you get older for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's just
I
one of
will
those universal truths.
100%. Yeah.
So
But yeah,
yeah,
this is the scene. This is the scene where Ferris Boyle is like, "We're both billionaires. I can tell you how much I fucking hate poor people. Yeah, that shit that I say on TV. People company. Who gives a shit or whatever? Can't let the workers get uppity. Like he has all these kind of like lines that he's saying, and you go like, "Oh, all right, man." Like he's like, "I've rigged the Humanitarian Industrialist of the Year award. I'm gonna win it. Isn't that cool, Bruce?" And Bruce is like, "Oh, yeah, that's really good, man. Yeah, neat."
which is kind of funny because like Bruce should know as like a I think he's around our age, like 30 to something like maybe close
Sure.
to 40. If you don't know by now, this is what most of Gotham's high society's kind of attitude is. Like maybe you're not as in tune with what the city needs as you think you are.
I think the big thing is like I figure Batman suspects some sort like it's obviously a vendetta against GothCorp. And I would throw out there that Bruce is like, I know how companies are, especially in Gotham. But there is sort of an extra line to Ferris Boyle, which is like he like personally basically executes Victor Freeze
Oh yeah.
and Nora Freeze. And like we don't learn it until a little later in the episode, but like that's a line even past the normal levels of like dispassionate kind of corruption or whatever of like selfishness of a billionaire. Like there's a sort of
Yeah.
extra layer of evil to Ferris Boyle that we're starting to sneak in a scene like this, I think.
Well, one thing I noticed when I was rewatching this episode before we started was you look like obviously they're doing it for like the sake of like the storytelling and like making sure you see everything. But with the static cuts, it looks like the CCTV footage is like stitched together. So it's like, did this guy like go to his media department
Yeah.
and say, "I want you to like tape this murder together. I want to watch Victor Freeze and his wife die on a loop."
Well, yeah, because it's on one tape, but it's cutting between, like, yeah,
Like
CCTV angles.
it's consistent with his character. Like,
Yeah, do you know what? I hadn't thought about that, but that there is an extra layer in there. Yeah, that's true.
So Batman and him talk for a bit, and then they talk about it, and that's how he's getting the humanitarian award. I think that's where he cut to that, and that's where I think that's where like he dresses up as the match's security guard.
I
Yeah,
refer to him as blonde John Travolta.
he tells Alfred that he's like something even more sinister is up. I need access to GothCorp's security tapes. So he goes in disguised as a security guard to get in past the door, and then he puts on his Batman costume and peruses the tapes. And I couldn't help but think like you could have gotten in as Batman. Like surely there's a vent or like some like what's the point of the extra subterfuge other than, and we know this is true, he loves to play dress up.
Oh yeah.
Um so I did think it was
Yeah,
funny that he's like, "Oh yeah, me no, I'm meant to be here tonight. The other guy is sick, you know what I mean?" And then as soon as he swipes the card and he's in, he's like, "Oh, I've got to put on my fucking mask." Like
yeah, you
we
had
don't
that
even
disguise
see
on
him
for like two
change. He
seconds
just
there.
he gets in. He swipes the card. He gets in. The next time we see him, he's dressed as Batman. So it's
No,
like that.
I think he's starting to see that like underneath he has it on. So like the next thing, just so you know, you're like, I don't even need to bother him to see him changing. Yeah, so
He must be the
Yeah, yeah,
sweatiest security guard with all those layers underneath.
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I got to use the little boys' room, so don't mind me. And you hear him like, God damn it!
yeah, because do you figure he has like his Bruce Wayne like suit underneath that as well, so he has like three
He's
layers
always
on.
wearing everything he
I didn't
needs.
even think about the Bruce Wayne because he's probably invited there too.
It's true. So he finally gets in. This is where he finds this security tape that is like possibly been stitched together, where it's like Victor Freeze talking about how he's invented cryostasis and his wife has this curable disease. And like he's barely into explaining it. He's like documenting his process. And then there's like a hey, what's going on in there? They kick the door open, and Ferris Boyle is like, I don't care if there's a human life hooked up to my machines. They're my machines. Like, turn it off. And he like shuts it down. Victor pulls a gun on him because he's a desperate man trying to save his wife. And this is where Boyle does the like, oh, who, me? No, we could talk this out. Ah! And he like kicks
Leonidas.
Victor. Yeah. This is Gothcorp. And he kicks him into the cryo stuff. And we get this great, like, no. And we sort of see him becoming Mr. Freeze. And, like, even Batman, like, when we cut back to Batman watching it, he's like, Jesus Christ. Like, even Batman's, like, shocked by it.
It's like, holy
So
God.
this is something I love talking to Adam about, like with the censors and stuff, like the stuff that got cut. They were originally going to have his hair like falling off in chunks
Oh,
in the
Jesus.
original. Yeah, like
I mean, that's pretty
like some
intense.
body horror, man.
That's
That's
pretty
like
intense, actually.
that sounds like some Chernobyl stuff right there. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, like, well, I mean, maybe that was partly what the direction was for Kevin Conroy or whatever. Because like Batman is watching this tape and he's like, holy shit! Like, Batman is so measured all the time, and he's like really shaken by watching
Yeah.
this tape.
I'm Batman. I've seen some shit.
Totally. Here's the other thing. Unless I missed it, like, I know later Nora is somewhere, but like, she like, for all intents and purposes, within the bubble of this episode, like, she's dead.
Well, that's
because like because Boyle shuts everything down and explodes everything. Nora is dead. Now that ends up not being true, and if you've seen like Batman, Mr. Freeze, Subzero, you definitely know that's not true. But like, for all intents and purposes, if you're just writing this episode and you're like, here's our new origin of Mr. Freeze, like, Nora fucking dies in this scene.
Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning in the beginning, that when I rewatched this, because yeah, I'm thinking that Nora's in like some lab or a warehouse in
Right.
safe storage, and Freeze is just like, no, you turned me into a monster. I can never be with my wife again. I mean, that's just insult to injury at this point.
Yeah.
He's thinking you killed my wife.
Yeah.
Like, this is
And
a man with absolutely nothing to lose, and that's what I
totally.
love as a villain.
And they don't undo that in this episode. Like, it's not like at the end when he's in prison, they're like, by the way, Nora's fine. And he's like, at least I know that. Or like, whatever. Like, she's dead as far as this
Yeah.
episode is concerned. I think where I was getting confused is that in Batman and Robin, they don't have the guts to do that. And they go like, oh, turns out she's in a different warehouse. They plugged her back in, Freeze, or whatever. And you go like, all right, cool.
Yeah, did you realize that, Adam, and that Nora, like he thought that Nora was dead, or did you think that she was like still with Victor at that point?
Uh, Honestly, I didn't really think about it just because I remember like I had seen like the other episodes before, so like I don't like sure I think when I first saw this I had saw the other episodes, so I just I don't even think about if she was like dead or not at
Yeah.
this point. I don't think.
It's one of those small details that like it just adds to the motivation, and it just makes the story that much cooler. Like, he's going to do like the worst punishment imaginable to this guy.
It's both the most compelling thing about this like revised origin and backstory from Mr. Freeze, but it also becomes the trap of Mr. Freeze in the comics and in other things moving forward. Is like the Riddler that can keep going. It's a compulsion. He can't stop. The Penguin, like every time he gets out, he says like, "I'm a businessman. He's crooked and he sells arms." Like you can keep doing that. Mr. Freeze, like, especially in this, it's like, my wife is dead. I'm getting revenge, blaze of ice glory. And that's it. It's one thing.
One
And then
specific
the
thing.
problem becomes with, it's like, how long can we keep Nora in the tube? How long can he not have a cure? And then in the comics, they go, like, should we take Nora out of the tube? And, like, there's, like, on a few different occasions, they've taken her out of the tube. And the only result is, like, we got to kill her again or put her back in the tube. Like, you realize they have nothing they could do with her. The closest you get is Batman, Mr. Freeze, Sub-Zero, the movie later, which is basically like she gets out of the tube and she doesn't want to be with Victor. And she
Yeah.
goes off and has a different life. And that's the closest they've ever gotten, I think, to it. Because otherwise he gets stuck. But in the animated thing, but with that movie and then his later appearance in Batman Beyond, where he's got fucking nothing and then he dies, you go like, okay, I think that's pretty much all you could do with this Mr. Freeze. Like it's a
It's one of
great
those things.
backstory, but it really traps him in a way that like Two Face
Yeah.
isn't trapped, or Penguin's not trapped, or Scarecrow's not trapped, or whatever.
Yeah. Because I remember like Freeze was always my favorite bad guy on this show. And then looking back, like and rewatching, I'm like, heck isn't Mr. Freeze in more of these? And then when you realize how actually challenging he is to write
Yeah.
and still see to the
Yeah,
essence of his
yeah,
character.
unfortunately, with like the singular motivation that he has, although really good, it doesn't really give him much to do other than that one
Yeah.
thing, really. Yeah.
It's not to say that it's impossible, but it's like, like it's the triumph of this episode becomes the biggest challenge to the character, which is like, and now what do we do? Like,
So after Batman says, "My God," he actually Mr. Freeze shows up behind him with another awesome line. He's like, "It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed, but
I
not
love this
shed."
writing.
and again, like no puns. He's not saying like my tears are frozen over or something. He just goes like, yeah, like I'm dead inside. It's all
He's like,
basically all he's
I have
saying
no,
in this
I
scene.
have no emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
And then we get to yeah,
He
him.
makes ice cups for Batman.
Yeah, the ice cups.
Yeah, we have a little scene of Batman being like, "It's horrible what he did to you," or whatever, and Freeze is like, "Yep, but I'm gonna kill everyone in the city because why the fuck not?" He's got
Because fuck,
a great line because Batman goes like, "Even if you have to kill everyone in the building, you're gonna get revenge on Boyle," and he says like, uh. Think of it, Batman, to never walk on a summer's day with the hot wind in your face and a warm hand to hold. Oh, yes, I'd kill for that. And you go, like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty intense for like a kid's cartoon.
If nothing else, I'm so glad we brought the doctor on for this episode because you're reading the lines so much better than Adam and I ever could.
Oh, this is a horrible Michael Ansara impression, but I'm doing my best.
yeah, as I told you at con this past weekend, like I can't do impressions, so like you're welcome to do one for me, man, because I cannot do
I'm usually
impressions of
his
the Force.
soundboard.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so
then we basically go to the humanitarian award, right? Like,
yeah,
Ferris Boyle's like,
he
yeah,
gets to
it's
the
me. Oh, me? Did I win this? Oh, I didn't know. I'm so good to Gotham. Don't look over there. Like,
don't look at those piles of frozen bodies over there.
yeah.
Yeah, and Freeze pulls up in his what do we call it? Like a freeze tank, like a freeze truck, like with
I
the
guess he
the
does end up with an ice tank, doesn't he?
yeah, he does have a
Yeah.
nice tank.
He does
And
sort of end up with an ice tank.
he's got that big cannon that Batman was showing on top of it. He pulls it up. I love that scene where he pulls up to the valet, and the valet is just like keys, and he just gives him this look like, bruh.
Yeah. I think the animated series is good for moments like that, like just
I love
little
it.
it's almost the same cadence as the like it's a living like in the Flintstones or whatever. Like you get it every once in a while in these episodes where someone just goes like "Mwah, mwah." Like I think it's
They
funny.
were
I like it.
making memes before memes even existed.
Totally.
Yeah, like regular people in Gotham like know how fucking weird that city is, so it's like, oh, you're fine. Just like let me just do my job at least,
Yeah,
or at
exactly.
least
I mean,
try to do my job.
you would have to know how weird the city is. I like the idea that he doesn't bat an eye. He goes like ice tank, keys. I don't
There's
know.
like, it's like, sure, why not?
Yeah,
Why not?
yeah.
I'm getting
I might
paid
as well
minimum
park
wage,
this.
guy. This is not the weirdest thing I've seen.
Yeah, 100%. So a bunch of people get frozen, and he starts freezing Ferris Boyle, and Batman shows up. Oh, and before Batman left to go to GothCorp, Alfred gives him a canister of soup, like a thermos, and
Yes.
goes, "It's the only thing to fight a cold." It's like warm chicken soup or something like that. And Mr. Freeze like talks about how his suit gives him extra strength and stuff like that. He's holding Batman, and Batman just slams the fucking thermos into his helmet, and all the hot soup cracks the helmet open. He's like, "No!" And someone goes, "What was that you did?" And he goes, "The only cure for a cold." He doesn't even say soup. It's Batman plays it so goddamn cool. But I love that it's like Alfred packed him soup, Chekhov's soup, as you pointed out, and then he like that's what undoes Mister Freeze.
Well, what I was picturing is like, what happens if he breaks the thermos? Like, does it like melt his face off? Like, does he go like, ah? Oh,
Well,
it's like, oh no, like I boiled it down to your skull.
it's funny because it looks like because of the color of the soup, you're like, oh, it's some sort of like heat chemical. But then you go, oh no, Batman had fucking soup on his belt.
Gotta wonder if Alfred was like smugly walking around the Batcave that entire month, like, I'm the guy who bit Mr. Freeze. I'm the guy who beat Mr. Freeze. Using it as like a line
Yeah.
to like pick up chicks at the bar.
Next week, Batman takes down Scarecrow with a foot long sub. It's just Alfred just keeps packing him shit. And he's like, try this, use this.
it, it takes a, like
This is
an
why I
extra
feed you.
yeah, with a protein bar that you pack just so you make sure you like eats.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I love that moment, and it's great to undo Mister Freeze there before he can actually kill Ferris Boyle. Batman like produces the tape and gives it to Summer Gleason. And he goes, I know this is going to look like it's edited, but I swear to God, this is what really happened. Um, yeah, and we basically wrap it up. We cut them back to the prison, like we do the bookend thing with Mister Freeze, right? And he's got the ballerina thing of like the music box of his wife, right? Like
Hmm. And this is
Just
one of the
like
few times that he doesn't have like the mechanical kind of, I guess, undertone of his voice, but like
yeah,
Michael Ansara, yeah, he's just like playing it like so emotionally and yet unemotionally, if that makes any sense. Like it's
it's
well done.
it's somewhere halfway between his Victor Freeze and his Mister Freeze.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and I love his like he has this line like I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you hear me somehow, someplace, somewhere where a warm hand waits for mine. And again in this episode, you're like, she's dead. And you go like that is the saddest shit I have ever seen in my life.
No kidding.
It's
yeah,
wild.
and then as that's going on, it cuts to outside, and like Batman's like watching him say that like from like an adjacent rooftop, and just like kind of cuts to the end of the episode.
It's great. I love it. What a good episode. Holy crap.
So yeah, so what would you give this episode out of five dead wives?
Oh, yeah, definitely five dead wives out of five. I'd also give it five Chekhov soups out of five. Yeah, it's a perfect episode. Like it deserves all its accolades. Its legacy is pretty secure. Even if other people had a hard time managing Mister Freeze after that, that's not this episode's fault that it did too good of a job giving him a cool thing. Like
When the bar's set that high, it's like, oh great, now we gotta go higher.
that's just it, right? So yeah, yeah, love it.
How about you, Braden? What did you give this episode out of like five dead wives?
Oh, I already had 5 out of 5
Oh yeah,
already written
yeah,
down.
yeah, 100% say the same here. Five out of five as well. Yeah, because yeah, this is like I say really probably like the best origin story this show will produce. Probably one of the best origin stories like ever done for comics. I think
This
really,
one,
and then yeah,
this
go ahead.
one, Feet of Clay, and then the episode with Scarecrow where Batman has the I am vengeance, I am the night like
Yeah,
monologue. Those are maybe like the three best episodes of this show to me.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah, it's one thing to take like a what was like a formerly corny kind of campy character and to turn them into like basically like a Shakespearean tragedy.
yeah,
they like
100%.
fundamentally changed the character from like even like in the comics like after this even because it was just like what this like Harley and Renee Montoya are like the three like main things they took from the comics from the show into the comics.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I think those are the big three for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there
So
might
yeah,
be something else in there, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, probably
really
smaller,
good.
smaller stuff, but yeah, but even the other two was probably eventually, but it was probably like this was probably like the main thing really. So
Totally.
yeah, so yeah, it's probably probably one of my favorite episodes. It's not my favorite episode of the show. So
Yeah,
yeah, so I
absolutely.
give it a 5 out of 5 as well.
Nice.
So so any last words on this episode before we close it off?
Oh, geez. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's perfect, And the thing that I think I had forgotten about it is that it's one episode. Like a bunch of the animated series is like two parters. Like Feet of Clay is a two parter. The Two Face one is a two parter, and that doesn't even count that we've seen Harvey a couple of times before he becomes Two Face.
Yeah.
A bunch of the big episodes of the animated series are two parters. And then you look at this one, it's like, holy shit! Like it's you're in, you're out. It's like 22 minutes, and yeah, I mean it's so well done. Yeah, it's crazy.
That is all for the episode for the week, folks. Thank you for joining us this week. Yammer on for as long as it has been. Follow us on Twitter/X at Beyond Backcast, on Instagram at Beyond the Backcast, and follow us and rate, review, subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And thank you for joining us this week, Doc. Where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, I'm the host of the Dr. DC podcast, which you could find at Dr. DC podcast on a bunch of social media and wherever you get your podcasts. And then me and my co-host Richard, we also do another podcast called Ghost Facers, a supernatural
Ooh.
rewatch, and we're going through, as you might guess, every episode of CW Supernatural. So you can find that everywhere as well.
Right, and Brayden, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram at Alfred is Zaddy.
Hell yeah.
And you can also find me at the Facebook page for Beyond the Backcast, where I post lots of internet memes and lots of my lame dad jokes on there.
Hell yeah.
All right, and you can find me at Sump Chuckman on Instagram. And thanks for joining us in the Batcave to talk about Batman the Animated Series at Beyond the Batcast. Goodbye, good chums. Kapow.